welcome. I'm Danielle Sagona, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Mark H. Newhouse, the multi-award-winning author of over 20 books, to discuss his latest series, the best-selling trilogy, The Devils Bookkeepers. Mr. Newhouse is the son of Holocaust survivors, and he turned a surprising discovery into the series we are talking about today. And with that, I would like to welcome Mark. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So I read the book, and I just want to know what inspired you. How did this all come about?
The Holocaust was always a shadow in my life. And I used to have terrible, terrible nightmares, but my parents never, ever spoke about it. So I really didn't know very much about it at all. And then shortly after my mother passed away, I found that we had a copy of the Chronicle of the Lodz Ghetto, which is where my parents were. And when I read it, I just could not believe what I was learning. So I guess I had to share it with my children and my grandchildren, future generations. And as I was sitting there reading it, I kept thinking like it was like these men who were experiencing all these changes in the ghetto, these life changes, how they must have reacted. So basically what I tried doing was creating a 12 Angry Men, which is one of my favorite movies ever, and doing that with the story of the chroniclers. So it's been an amazing, absolutely amazing experience. I actually imagine I was in the room as these things were happening.
It comes across in the novels. I mean, you put yourself there, and I imagine that was challenging. Were there any other challenging aspects of writing? It's not an easy topic to discuss.
The whole thing was extremely challenging, but it was so worthwhile because I learned so much. I think it was very, very difficult. It's not an easy thing to write about, obviously, but it is just such an important thing to learn about and to understand what happened. It's much more than about the Holocaust. The book deals with universal themes. There's passion, there's love. It's a love story. And there's a story of sacrifice and caring. And I'm just amazed at the reception it's been receiving. I think people are sensing what I was trying to do with it.
Yeah, well, I'm not amazed. And there's a lot of Holocaust books out there already, but I'm grateful for yours. And what would you say to other people that say, oh, we already have enough books about the Holocaust?
A lot of the Holocaust books deal with death. They deal with the gas chambers and with the concentration camps. My book doesn't deal with death. It deals with love, survival, and hope. And I think that's a very big difference. I also think we have to look at the Holocaust a little bit differently. It uses the Holocaust as an example of what can happen when hate is mechanized. And it's amazing to think that all of these things happened. 6 million Jews were killed. 6 million so-called undesirables were killed from 1938 to 1945. That's incredible. It's never happened before. It'll never happen again. I pray.
I pray. Absolutely. And like you said, the themes are universal. And even though it takes place during World War II, it's very much relevant today. So thank you for that.
Well, that's why I think my book is different than just, a book about the Holocaust. It's not meant to scare. It's not meant to say we should hate. It's the opposite. It's meant to share love and hope and show people who are passionate, real human beings and what happens to them, and make us care about it.
What has this series meant to your family? How does everyone feel about this?
My wife had to suffer with me while I was doing it. I'm sure that wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I sat down at my computer for 30 days straight and typed out 600 pages. And honestly, it was as if the ghosts of my lost relatives were writing it through me. My
Mhm.
hope is that when my grandchildren are older, they will read it. I think there's a normal amount of fear about reading something about the Holocaust. And I think that's why I knew so little about it. I actually thought it was like Anna Tefka in Fiddler on the Roof, and
Mhm.
far from it. It was something that the Nazis built as a holding pen for Jews before they were sent to the final solution. And I'm hoping that it'll make my children and my grandchildren and many, many people who have read it more aware of what actually happened and why it must never happen again.
It's important to know where they came from, even as uncomfortable as it may be, and for these stories and your family stories to not stop here, to keep being
I think it's a
passed
very
on.
important, I think it's a very important legacy. It's part of what made me who I am. And I think it's amazing that it's almost, I guess it's about 75 years and it still has a huge impact in so many ways on the world and on the way people think.
You're opening the dialogue for your
There are a
children.
lot of there are a lot of books about the Holocaust. Uh, This one I think is different because it's a love story and because of the characters. The characters, the biggest thing I get from people who read it is the characters seem so real and people care about them. And that to me was really one of my goals. I want people to see these characters as real people. And I think it's the passion and realism of the characters that really makes people walk away from the book haunted long after they read them.
Mark, would you do me the honor and read an excerpt from the book, please?
It's my honor, Danielle. I'm not going to look for the most exciting chapter.
Okay.
Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the very first line of book one so that you can see the tension and suspense. Lodz Ghetto, Poland, December 10th, 1940. It was the devil's signature on the note. Hands trembling, I hid it from Miriam, my young wife, in my coat pocket. We were relatively new to the ghetto, and I was afraid the summons meant we would be driven out of the barbed wire enclosed slum, as we had been chased from the city that surrounded it. Miriam's parents had given their daughter to me to protect, but there wasn't any safety for Jews in Europe, only uncertainty under Nazi occupation. The thin soles of my shoes were little protection from the cobblestone gutters as I walked to the headquarters of the Jewish Ghetto Administration. I thought back to any actions, any statements I might have made that could have gotten me this unwanted attention. The rumors were that Chairman Rumkowski's spies were everywhere. Had one informed on me? Had a neighbor turned me in to curry favor? What would Miriam do if I were imprisoned? How would she manage if I were sent away? People disappeared, and nobody ever heard from them again.
Thank you. To hear your voice reading the book, I appreciate that. That was special.
Thank you.
And as of now, you have over 400 reviews on Amazon, and I have just a few.
That's like pulling teeth, let me tell
Yes,
you.
exactly. No, they're good, I promise.
A lot of people, don't like putting reviews on. So I'm amazed that the book has gotten so many. I guess because it touches their hearts and souls, and so they feel they want to share the word. And many of them, have emailed me and written very passionate, replies about how they felt as they read the book.
I'm glad they emailed you, not just leaving comments. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I admittedly am one of those people that too afraid to leave comments, but that says a lot for someone to take the time. So I have just a few. There's a comment. I felt as if I was choking as the news tightened. And thank you for all the sleepless nights. So those are some intense comments. What do you think of those?
I'm when I read the reviews, I get tears in my eyes. I really do, because I think every author dreams of touching the readers' hearts and souls. And that's what these reviews make me feel like I've succeeded with these books.
And another comment that came up a lot is that the readers felt like they were actually there in the ghetto. What kind of research did you do to make that feel so realistic?
Well, you know, as I said before, I grew up thinking that the ghetto had existed for hundreds of years. I never understood that the Germans actually set up part of the city of Lodz, a slum, and I didn't know what it was like. So I ended up searching hundreds and hundreds of photographs that were taken by two very brave men. One was Mendel Grossman, and the other was Henrik Ross. And they took these photographs through holes in their coat pockets. And as I looked at them, I tried thinking, what were the roads made out of? What were the buildings made out of? Did they have electric poles in the streets? So that was one of the ways I did it. I also read a lot of books, and I talked to people. I joined a number of Holocaust groups on Facebook.
Oh.
And one thing is, I never believe I'm selling a book. I'm trying to sell myself. So I don't join a group unless I can contribute to it. But these people gave me so much information, so many things I did not know, and I was able to incorporate them into the book, which is why I think it is so real to people.
It is. I personally had never heard of the Lodz Ghetto. So this was...
Most people have heard of the Warsaw Ghetto because there was an uprising there. The Lodz Ghetto was interesting because of the fact the leader resisted all attempts at any kind of uprising. He used his own secret police force to put down labor rebellions and to stop any kind of resistance. He did the Germans' dirty work for them, which makes him so controversial.
And now that you talk about and expose Lodz and bring it to light, I think now more people will also do their own research.
Well, that's a very interesting point, because a lot of people, after they read my books, they try to buy the Chronicle of the Lodz Ghetto itself, which was published by Yale University Press in 1984. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to get it. And I'm very grateful to Yale University Press because they allowed me to use excerpts of these very dry entries as introductions to the chapters of my book.
What?
The book actually follows the daily routines and the daily events that happen in the ghetto. That's what makes it so alive for people.
Wow, that's so interesting. And it does. I didn't necessarily feel alive. I personally felt anxious the whole time reading it. It was intense. And was that intentional on your part for the reader to just be unsettled and nervous the whole time?
The uncertainty of the ghetto is what I was trying to capture. And again, from readers' comments, they are rooting for the characters to survive. Everybody knows that eventually the ghetto is going to vanish from the face of the earth. But they hope that the characters will survive. I won't give you a spoiler, but there's always hope and humor in my books, even about the Holocaust.
How did you manage to do that, to insert hope and humor into just dire situation?
I've read hundreds of books about about abuse. And after a while you go, wow, I can't stand anymore. Well, that's the problem with a lot of the books that are written about the Holocaust. But I believe that the people who were there, they may have found humor in strange places. Humor and hope keep us going. And so I found things in the entries that to me would have been humorous. For example, at one point they wrote an entry about a long line at the cemetery. And I thought, how did they react to a line at the cemetery? And then there was another part where one of the biggest problems was horse manure and the way it was filling up the streets. And I thought about how they would react to that. And yes, I think humor keeps us going, and it's an important element in the battle to survive, even under the direst circumstances.
It's true. As the saying goes, you have to laugh to keep from crying.
It's the best medicine.
It's a little fuel to keep you going. It's just to laugh at it. And that's a good way to think about life. Your audiobook, I listened to that as well. Who read that? His voice captivated, but it was a little bit eerie. There was a lot of gravitas and the characters became real. Just one gentleman reading all of the different characters. Who was that?
He is an actor. His name is Louis B. Jack. And we had a number of people audition, but his voice and his passion for the book won me over. And when I first heard his first chapters, I just had tears in my eyes. I just could not believe how wonderful it was. And then when I heard the entire book one, and then again, book two, I just felt so awed that someone was reading my words. It was as if someone else wrote them. And he just did an amazing job. If I couldn't read them, there was no one else I could have chosen that I thought could do a better job. And it's kind of an interesting thing too, because doing an audiobook is not inexpensive. And the reason I did it was because someone said to me that they knew a survivor of the Holocaust who could no longer read books. And I thought to myself, if I can even help one survivor or one veteran read this tribute to them, then it was worth doing, no matter what the cost and no matter what the effort. So I'm really glad we did it.
I didn't even think about that. I just assume audio books, that's part of it, but this was vastly important. I didn't think about the aging Holocaust survivors. So you're
with
over
me, it's
20 demographics.
with me, it's never really mattered how many books I sell. It's how many hearts and minds I can touch with these books. And for one veteran to come to me, and we had a veteran come to me and he said, "This book makes me mad in a good way." That's a compliment I would not have had without the audiobooks.
That's incredible. What an impact.
All you need is one person to say something like that to you, and all the sweat and all the stress, it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. So now, what's next?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I had people ask me why I didn't do a book about the Holocaust for young people. So I didn't know of a story that I'd been working on, and we finally released that. It's called My Family's Secret, The Holocaust. And in it, a young boy who did not know his family died during the Holocaust is forced basically to become a detective to find out what really happened. And I'm very proud to say we just won a major award from the Florida Writers Association for that book. So that is available, and I'm hoping to create a study guide for it soon as well. I had to get away from the Holocaust a little bit, and so I decided to write about something else I care a great deal about, which is the epidemic of bullying. And I write children's mystery series which is the Defenders of Monstrovia series. And it also has won a number of awards. And basically, it's about the lawyer for mythical monsters and fictional folk in a land called Monstrovia, where humans are the endangered species. And in this particular book, which I hope to finish very soon, cyberbullying is the problem. And the ending is a tremendous surprise. All my life, as a teacher and as an author and as a human being, bullying and how we treat other people has been a major, major concern. Mm-hmm. So I've come full circle because, again, the Holocaust has been the shadow of my life. It's made me who I am.
Mark, you've written over 20 books. Do you have any advice or tidbits for up-and-coming authors to how to handle difficult subjects when writing?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I look for in any writer, in fact, anybody, is if they have a passion for what they're doing. And if you have that passion, just don't give up. It doesn't matter. When I wrote these books, it didn't matter to me if I sold books, if I went commercial, or if I published them. I had to get that feeling out of myself and share it with at least my family. And so my suggestion is always think of what you're doing as an accomplishment. And if you don't care about what you're doing, don't do it. But if you do care, don't let anything stop you. That's the biggest thing I've learned from writing this series of books.
I love that. I'm not an author, but that's really great life advice. And
take it with me too, because I don't know what I want to be when I grow up yet. So that's going to help me too.
And even though it was difficult, there was catharsis at the end.
What I try and do in my books is help children become problem solvers, not with magic or with violence, but with their intelligence, their courage, and their resourcefulness. I want to empower kids, and that's what my series books do. And I suppose in a way that's been the theme of all my books, a theme of hope and a theme that we should not have any room in our heart for hate.
No, none. And I'm looking forward to reading those. Mark,
thank you.
Thank you very much for sitting down with me and taking time. This was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it too.
And I appreciate you sharing these vastly important stories, and more importantly, sharing your family with us.
Thank you. Can I just say that the books are all available on Amazon and Kindle.
Perfect.
And also as audiobooks for book 1 and book 2, and hopefully book 3 very soon. Thank you very much, Danielle. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Mark. For more from Mark and the NCG family of authors, visit newhousecreativegroup.com and Newhouse Creative Group on Facebook.